Alright, so you just finished binge watching Friends and you are so ready for big city life. New York, the city that never sleeps. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere! Well, there's a few things you should probably know before you get here, so let's just go through some general etiquette and stuff that actual New Yorkers might appreciate you paying attention to. Now, as someone that was born in New York but wasn't necessarily raised in New York, the first thing you're going to notice is that people walk fast. The reason for this is shit happens real fast here, and you can't really afford to dawdle if you live and work here. So, what are some things to keep in mind? If you're walking on the street of New York and there's people obviously trying to get past you, just move to the side. Try to keep a brisk pace because honestly, everyone around you is going to be keeping a pretty brisk pace, and just don't cause an issue if someone speed walks past you. They're probably not trying to be rude. They probably have like 9 million meetings and have to grab coffee for all of them. Shit's intense here. Now, no one is denying that New York is a pretty amazing city. While it's not the prettiest, we do have our fair share of subway wraps and trash piles. It is a very iconic place to take photographs of, and please take all the photographs you want. But if you're going to take a photograph, make sure you get out of the way of foot traffic and you're not blocking everybody and your group is not taking up the entire street, because like we mentioned in the previous section, people have got shit to get to. New York's a busy city, so if you're going to take a selfie with your friends or a picture, please try not to block either car traffic, foot traffic, bike traffic, and just generally don't step in front of a police car or block them from doing their job. Just be polite. Now, the first thing you're going to notice if you're not from a major city is stuff here is pretty expensive, at least in Manhattan, which is what most people consider to be New York. I fully understand that maybe your small town in Kansas does not charge that much for a water bottle, but just keep in mind that we have to pay these prices every day. And we don't like it either. We love our city, we love our home teams, we love our local pub, and yeah, we realize that $15 for a cocktail is kind of asking a lot, but don't remind us of how cheap stuff is at home or how expensive our stuff is and how ridiculous it is. We know, and we're annoyed and don't want to hear you saying it anymore, quite frankly. Like, come on. We know, guys. We know. Now, as subways goes, New York has a pretty decent subway line. We have some pretty easy ones to follow within Manhattan. It's just when you get out to Brooklyn, Queens, or the Bronx that you might get a little lost. Don't know what those are? Don't worry, we'll get to those later. So some of the main lines you should at least get a decent handle on are the 123, or the red line, the BDFM, the orange line, the NQRW, the yellow line, or the 456, the green line. You also have lines like the L, which goes to Brooklyn, although some of the yellow line also goes to Brooklyn, the R goes to Brooklyn. I don't want to complicate things for you. There's also the J, there's the Path, which goes to New Jersey. You also have your main train stations such as Penn Station and Grand Central. No, they are not the same station. Please don't make that mistake. You will regret it. But something to keep in mind just as you're trying to get around the city is it's going to matter which subway station you hop into. If you're trying to go uptown, make a concerted effort to get on the uptown train. If you're trying to go downtown, same thing goes. Now, if you're trying to get to a specific part downtown, try to think of where roughly that is on the map. If it's on the more the western side, or it's on like West 34th or West 58th, look at what line corresponds. Here, I'll do it for you. That would probably be the 123 or the BDFM. If you're trying to get on more of the eastern side, you're going to want the 456 or the NQR, depending on where you're trying to go. If you're going uptown, maybe the 456, because the yellow line does this funky thing where it goes into Queens, and it's not going to keep going up. It's going to go across, and maybe you don't want to go to Queens today. So just, try to figure out what the basic lines are. If you don't know what the actual letter should be, using the color is a pretty good frame of reference. Unless you want to go to New Jersey, don't get off the path. And unless you want to go to upstate New York, maybe don't get on the wrong train. The Long Island Railroad will take you to Long Island. And the other rail lines that go up to northern New York will go to New York and Connecticut. So just keep an eye on where you want to go and never be afraid to actually ask somebody where something is. And no, you do not have to buy a single ride Metro card every time you get on the subway. Just buy a basic one and refill it when you need it. Trust me, it just makes a whole lot more sense. You'll tell yourself you only need one swipe, but trust me, you're gonna need more than one swipe, and constantly buying little one ride throwaways is really freaking annoying and wasteful. Now, if the movies have taught us anything, it's that things happen in a New York minute so fast. Everything's so sped up when you watch those movies. It doesn't work like that here. So, yes, your train might be delayed. Yes, your bus might be a little late one morning. Yeah, the guy making your coffee in the corner cart might have to take a phone call when he's getting your coffee together. Honestly, just keep your shit together. Most of us can do it. The thing to understand here is the concept of a New York minute is kind of bullshit. There is really no such thing. Yes, you might have to answer 90 million emails as a New York employee in a New York minute, but so does literally everybody else who has a job. So as you are going around on your whirlwind tour of New York and you want to see everything, just build in enough time for traffic, train delays. Rain is a thing that affects certain train lines. Yeah, if you're landing on an airplane and you're going into LaGuardia and taking the subway into Manhattan, that might take kind of a while. If you're taking the bus into Manhattan, you might hit some traffic. If you decide to fly into Newark and you have to take New Jersey Transit, I cringe, into New York City, yeah, you're going to have to wait a minute. It's not going to be instantaneous. Just keep in mind that your New York experience may not be as fast-paced and exciting as you see on TV and movies. We're real people too, and it's a real city. This is not Sex and the City or Friends. Stuff does not just happen right away. Also, nobody lives in an apartment that big unless they are freaking loaded. Now, in some YouTube videos, you may have seen people joyfully expressing, "I'm in New York!" as they go to record a selfie of themselves scrolling through Times Square. And every now and there, you'll hear someone go, "Fuck you!" or something similar to that. All New Yorkers are not assholes, but admittedly, when you live in New York and you live pretty close to Times Square, which I do, it does get kind of old to see people swirling around yelling, "I'm in New York!" all day long. It's imagine if someone came to visit you in, say, Topeka, Kansas or something, and they're like, "I'm in Topeka!" every single morning in front of your house. It gets a little old. So while we fully appreciate that you're enjoying New York to the fullest and you are here to experience our fair city, just be aware that you might want to tone it down a bit. Like if you're doing like a fancy vlog entry where you go around and talk about all the cool stuff you're seeing, do some research. If you're going to talk about Macy's and spew blatantly false information, be aware that your average New Yorker is probably going to walk right up to you and correct you. Also, if you're doing your selfie swirl, just don't knock into people, or if you do, apologize. If you're having your New York moment trying to take a picture in Times Square, just be respectful of other people around you and be aware that the NYPD is there to help you not get assaulted, not piss you off and personally inconvenience you. That's all. Now, despite our proximity to New Jersey, our water is not terrible. We have a great filtration system, but if you still want to insist on refusing to drink New York City tap water, here's a little trick you should keep in mind. When someone says in a restaurant, such as a waiter, "Would you like bottled or New York's finest, be aware that New York's finest is kind of an inside joke with New Yorkers. What they really mean is tap water. So if you're really adverse to our tap water and you must have bottled, filtered, bougie water, don't ask for New York's finest. Just an insider, real quick pro tip. Now, with movies like Brooklyn that came out, you may also now know that Brooklyn exists. Or maybe you knew about Brooklyn from some other TV show. But please be aware that New York is more than just Manhattan. And leaving Manhattan, while slightly scary for a new person, is really not that bad. So if you're coming to visit New York, try to get out of Manhattan at least a few times. Go to Queens. Experience Flushing, which is a part of Queens that has amazing Korean food because it is kind of a large Korean population there. Try to get up to the Bronx or Harlem. Not really that scary of areas. It's not like you see in all the old TV movies. It's actually a pretty cool place. Try to get out to Brooklyn every now and then. I mean, it's a neat, funky place. Yeah, there's a lot of hipsters, and yes, it's usually associated with kale and hipsters, but it also has a rich history in hip-hop, so get your butt down there. Also, while you're in town, maybe swing by Long Island. Maybe try Jersey City. Maybe try to get to some of the other local areas that, aren't as common. Just a thought. It's a pretty big area, even though New York City is traditionally shown as Manhattan. There's more to it than just Manhattan. While we're often portrayed as the city that quote-unquote never sleeps, be aware that we do actually shut shit down at certain hours. While some places will stay open as late as 5 in the morning, or 4 in the morning, or 2 in the morning, depending on where you are and what day of the week it is, not every establishment is like that. Most restaurants will close well before those times, and most bars, on average, will probably start shutting up shop around 2 or 3 at the latest. So even though you might be tempted to have like a full 24-hour bender in New York, as a New Yorker, I would advise you try to keep in mind when stuff opens and closes and try not to do too much on your first night here, because even though we are the city that never sleeps, you're going to be sleeping for a while if you try to stay out as late as you can at the bar that stays open the latest, because stuff does go by in a New York minute when you're trying to achieve the never sleeping part. Just, pace yourself. And also on that topic, please be aware that some of us really do sleep and really need sleep and live in the city and can hear you when you're screaming on the street. Whether you're by a major apartment building or in the brownstone area, just be aware that it is generally considered polite not to scream and shout and break shit outside of our windows, because we actually sleep because we actually live and work in the city you are partying in. Just a tip. Alright, so the most iconic thing about New York, if not the buildings and the New York minutes, the New York moments, and all that shit, is taxis. We see so many movies and TV shows and everything show the emblematic yellow taxi and putting your arm out in the street to signal the taxi. Oh, I'm in New York. Oh, I'm hailing a taxi. Cool. Totally recommend you take a taxi at least once here, but here's some stuff you should know. When you're getting a taxi in New York, there's a few things that you should keep an eye out for and be aware of. Yellow taxis are regulated by New York, as in they have to follow strict rules. There are things they can and cannot do, and say if they get into an accident, are extremely disrespectful to you, steal your shit, do anything bad or against the law, they are held very much accountable. You can check all their licenses and shit when you get in the car. It's actually pretty much plastered on their window. more often than not, there is a lot of motivation to give you good service because it is very, very hard to get a medallion or the thing that recognizes that car as a New York yellow taxi on that car. So your taxi guy is really not going to be in any way wanting to give you a shitty or bad time. Now, goes both ways. If you, say, are super drunk and super rude, they're probably going to want to get you out of that cab as fast as possible because that cab is their cash cow. And let me tell you, cleaning puke out of a car is not cheap. Don't ask me how I know that. But for them, especially if that is their main source of income, they cannot afford to have that car smelling like puke at all. As soon as you are out of that car, they pretty much are screwed and need to get that thing cleaned ASAP. So you've pretty much ruined their day if you puke in a cab. Now, they're not the only cabs on the road, though. New York does have a crap ton of other cab services. We do have Uber. I don't support them. We do have Lyft. I do support them. We also have other services like Get that offer flat rates of $5. I believe it's under a certain amount of streets and above. It's basically like the East Village area. You can get anywhere for $5. No questions asked, which is pretty nice. We also have Via, which is brand new, and I think Halo might still be around. There's a crud load of app-based ones. Just be careful. Make sure you actually get some reviews of the different services. They tend to change real fast, and at any given time, they kind of outpace each other. So depending on which one you use, just research first. Now, the other kind of cab on the road, the one that most tourists will fall for first, unfortunately, is a gypsy cab. What is a gypsy cab? A gypsy cab is essentially one of those limousine-type cars that when you're hailing a cab, might pull over and ask if you need a ride. Here's something you should know. While yellow cabs are highly, highly regulated, and drivers who drive for Uber, Via, Lyft, any of those services are at least held to a minimum amount of restriction, gypsy cabs operate completely independently. So while you may pay $15 for a ride out of a yellow cab because it's on a meter, which will show you how much you owe as you are driving around, how much you pay a gypsy cab is entirely up to the gypsy cab. So if they get in, they say, oh, it's going to be roughly $15. If they decide to go driving up and down FDR until they get that meter up to however much they want, or they decide when you get there that, no, actually, this is a little farther than I thought, you have to pay $30, they can do that. They're an independent operator, and they don't have a medallion, so they're not really held to that standard. And what happens a lot of times is people will haplessly get into these cars with these kind of sketchy cab drivers and end up paying a lot of money that they wouldn't have had to pay if they'd gotten a legit yellow cab. So when you come to visit here, go for a yellow cab as a first choice. Preferably take the subway, but if you can't take the subway, get a yellow cab. Or if you can't find one, use your preferred taxi app of choice. Lyft and Uber are very strong here, so feel free to use those. But depending on where you are in New York, literally any of those services work here. It's a lot more effective than trying to call a cab company, and quite frankly, it's less annoying. So just be safe when you're using taxis here, and don't get into the limousine-looking gypsy cabs. It's not a good idea. So finally, just have fun. When you're in New York, we understand that it's going to be an amazing experience, so just enjoy it. And honestly, I hope this has been helpful for anyone who might want to visit New York, and have a great day.